Good afternoon and welcome to the COMIT Virtual Happy Hour. We say happy hour, it's a virtual pub style environment that COMIT runs every month. It's a friendly chat about hot topics over a beer or a cup of tea or a gin and tonic. I hear you say, what is COMIT? Well, COMIT is a community made up of owners, contractors, vendors, solution providers, and of course academics. COMIT has a long history of developing and running projects and webinars with a focus on increasing productivity for better outcome. As I'm often reminded, it's not just about the people, it's the tech and it's the process. By being collaborative with all of the stakeholders, we create value, and through enablement, process improvement, we can deliver and demonstrate through projects. Behind all technological initiatives in our industry is a simple goal, and that is improving productivity. Often the best improvements come from a combination of the knowledge of the people in the process with the technology. COMIT and its community has identified with the major barriers facing our industry and has developed a unique opportunity to see and create enablers with the potential for beneficial change that would lead to across industry improvements. The webinars that we've been running demonstrate that. And in a moment, I'll hand you over to the team, Bhargav, to present. We have a panel session that will follow. I'll introduce those in a second. So I just want to say something else as well. Yesterday, COMIT ran a community day that was hosted by Siemens at the Red Bull Technology Campus. It was well attended. We had some fabulous presentations, and I was reminded just to mention the next one we've got is on the 9th of June, and it's going to be another prestigious location, and that's the JCB World Headquarters in Staffordshire. Anybody would like to attend and present, just get in touch. Okay, on to today's session. The productivity paradox. The harder you try, the more it slips away. Construction has long been criticised for its low and stagnated productivity, especially when it's compared with other industries. While the lean and the last planner system help solve some of the aspects associated with establishing flow, more work is needed to simplify and optimise the top-down production planning and align it with the production line concept to improve flow. In today's session, the productivity paradox, the harder you try, the more it slips away. This session will discuss how a holistic approach to productivity can significantly improve efficiency. Okay, from left to right, we've got Bhargav. Bhargav is the founder and CEO of Visilean. We've got Mark Worrell. Mark is the CEO of BBI Services Limited. And we've got Steve Hawthorne. Steve is a project director with Mace Group. And after Bhargav is presented, we'll get everybody together and we'll have a discussion around the topic. So I'm going to hand over to Bhargav. Before I do that, just give me 1 second. I want to just make mention of something that if any questions crop up during the session, please put them in the chat box and send them through. We do have, I have to say thank you, we do have a lot of questions that came in at registration, and I'm hoping at some point we can go through those. But yeah, please keep them coming through. So let me hand over to Bhargav. You should have control now.
Okay. Is the screen visible now?
Yes.
Are the slides changing, Stuart?
No. It came on for a second, but it's not there.
Wait. Okay. Okay. Now what I need to do now?
There we are.
Yeah.
Yep.
All good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks a lot, Stuart, for the introduction. And as Stuart mentioned, I'll be talking about the productivity paradox. And I wanted to be a bit provocative on this. So, just because things haven't been changing, we've been bitten with a stick all these sort of decades where, people say construction hasn't changed and so on and so on. And ever since I graduated, so just as a matter of background, my sort of first degree is in construction. So I'm a construction engineer by education. And then ever since I graduated, I worked sort of in the interface of digital and construction. So both my master's and PhD were in digitizing construction. In between, I worked with construction companies on the construction projects and also in research. So I worked as a researcher, as a research fellow at Salford to begin with when I was doing my PhD. And then I went to Aalto in Finland, where I did my postdoc and worked as a senior researcher. And following my research, I actually founded the company Visilean to kind of digitalize construction management. But productivity in general has been a very interesting topic, and I thought I'll sort of talk about that today. And as Stuart mentioned, sort of we have had ever since I graduated, ever since I picked up reading research papers, this is what has been sort of thrown at us, that productivity has declined or is declining or stagnant, and it's kind of not really improving compared to other industries. Even agriculture is now, they're saying, improving compared to construction. So somehow, that's very critical of construction. And it's always made me wonder, every time we start reading papers, they just talk about this, but then why has things not, or why have things not changed? There are so many communities like COMIT around the world, and I think we're all doing great work, but there are still certain things where things need to be done. And I wanted to be, this is now the happy hour, so I wanted to kind of start with this question. So have you seen this guy on the site lately? So before we go into the actual session, I just wanted to kind of challenge you with or challenge us with some of our thoughts that we are asking for better productivity, and why sort of are we asking for better productivity? So have we kind of changed human beings fundamentally, that we are kind of asking that they'll start producing double the output that they was doing since yesterday or the decade before? Or our construction sort of sites, do they look like this? Are we producing in factories? Well, in some cases, yes. In fact, today's case study highlights that quite a lot of construction can be done off-site, but even then, on the ground, things haven't really changed much. So why? So we don't have robots like these sort of walking around construction sites, not yet. So we still have to sort of work with human beings. And the third thing, which is the main thing where actually I want to focus today, when did we last change how we actually construct, the processes, the systems? And in fact, going a bit more deeper into that what is the production management system that we use? Ever since Ford actually invented the production line, this has dominated the manufacturing world. They have a production line, and they either have human beings or robots, but they have a very systematic process that they actually use to control production. How do we control construction? Do we have a production management system? We don't have conveyor belts, that's for sure. So those are the sort of things I want to talk about today. And so the main thing, the issue with productivity, and generally project productivity, this is what I want to kind of leave you with, is that it's not defined just by your crew's capability. I mean, individual trades, they want to perform at their best capacity, most of the time. Most people have quite well defined activities that they want to carry out, and yet we end up with these sort of statistics. this is not just single research. Many researchers and sort of practitioners have highlighted that almost 50% of the crew's time on a construction site is spent in non-value adding activities, and I'm now putting a lean lens on. So anything that doesn't add value to the customer is considered as waste. So half of the time that we actually spend is going towards waste, and that's striking considering kind of global construction industry standing at 12 trillion today. It's quite striking. And then another statistic, it says 45% of construction professionals, they report spending more time than expected in non-optimal. So they are very kind of hand in hand. And then the last thing, which is kind of more critical and something that's quite important for today's sort of discussion, is that almost 68% of the trades they point, or subcontractors, they point to poor schedule management as the key contributors to decreased labor productivity for their own sort of management. And that really is sort of thought-provoking in a way. And so in general, the way productivity is not a linear concept, but the way we have adopted it is as a linear concept, that we have this sort of imaginary world of planning where we imagine all the productivity from the crews. We actually input them in the spreadsheet or a Gantt chart, and then come up with a schedule with a very thermostat like mechanistic model saying this thing will finish, this thing will start, and everything will be just sort of, there will be a magic wand that everything will just appear just as it should. When we hit execution, and this is not rocket science, everybody who's worked on a construction site knows that the moment that plan hits the ground, it's obsolete. So you need to constantly then reconcile that plan with reality, with the resource flows and everything, and then the schedule is kind of constantly changing. But where does productivity fit into all of this, and why are we not able to kind of improve on things? And one of the big sort of issues is that the linear approach that we have, it doesn't work. We have a very top-down sort of approach where we throw those sort of schedules to the side, and it does not account for buffers, or when it does, they are unrealistic. There is a constant push rather than sort of the pull from the ground, meaning we are pushing those schedules to the people on the ground without really letting them absorb them and bring out kind of how they're going to work on the ground, with each other, and how will they make commitments to you. And then there is this endless loop of plan rescheduling without really any improvement there. So those are the sort of the problems. And then the other major problem is that we are focusing on individual productivities, and that's where kind of my biggest sort of issue lies, is that if you consider all of these lines which are on the screen, if you have a time location chart, they are all based on the individual productivity. And as you see that red line, which is kind of more slanted, that shows you the slowest subcontractor that you might have. So think about like subsequent tasks, like your painter, your plasterer, your painter, electrician, and so on. They're all stacked up against each other. There are the buffers in the middle, but then you're as fast as your slowest crew, and that will sort of affect your overall system productivity. And unless you have a good handle on your system productivity, or you've been thinking like that, you're not going to be able to control or improve productivity in construction in general. And why then we are focusing on sort of the faulty model? It's because we've been focusing too long on the productivity and this sort of linear approach and the top-down approach, rather than actually thinking more on the holistic manner. And how do we focus on the system? What is the production management system that we're going to use? How are people going to work together to actually deliver that more holistic, the system productivity, instead just sort of breaking things down into little pieces? And so the main argument is that the productivity should improve and will improve if the production management system is efficient. And by production management system, coming from the lean word, I'm going to talk about a lean production management system. And rather than going, throwing all the theory at you, I actually wanted to show a case study that we have been, part of since last 3-4 years now. And the case study kind of, talks about how lean has been implemented on the ground along with BIM. And the reason why I want to talk about those two things is that in order to achieve efficient sort of production management, we need to understand how the process is delivered. And those are the sort of the questions of like how we're going to build something, when are we going to build it, who's going to build it, all those sort of questions, and combine that with BIM, or the product data, meaning what we are going to build. And until we sort of answer those sort of questions together, meaning the product and the process are combined with each other, we're not going to be able to kind of design an effective production management system. That was kind of my PhD predominantly, and Visilin was sort of based on that kind of a mindset. But before we go and jump into the whole sort of digital world, the idea is that we need to understand the people and the process side, as Stuart sort of mentioned in the beginning. Without addressing the processes, without addressing the training and the people aspect and the education there in terms of the change, we are not going to be able to achieve what we are kind of setting out to achieve. And so the analog is really important, understanding where people come from before we actually move into the digital world. And both Stuart and Mark today, in the panel, will sort of talk about this as well, I'm sure. And this is actually a shout out to Mark here, who's on the panel, that on this case study, the BBI, who Mark is the CEO of, they've been working with Mace, addressing some of these sort of people and processes before, the digital side has kind of Visilin sort of jumped in. And both in terms of kind of, leadership and sort of change management, as well as sort of ground level, setting up the processes in terms of how the collaboration will happen on the ground, and how the performance will improve. And this is kind of quite critical to sort of address. And the key factor here is that on this particular project, the team actually laid down a whole sort of systematic way of enabling kind of the reconciliation of the top-down schedule and the program with this, what you see is like a collaborative planning way to break that down into your look ahead and weekly plans, and even, as we'll see, daily plans, and then getting them into more realistic and reliable sort of short term schedules. And so high labor productivity, and this is actually a proven concept, that high labor productivity goes hand in hand with shorter and more reliable schedules. You cannot control productivity through sort of this very high level top driven schedule, and that's kind of quite critical. And this particular project was very effective in being able to achieve that. They also set up this sort of what they call gold command room, where what you see are those sort of touchscreen walls all around you, and they had a sort of a very systematic approach of bringing subcontractors, and actually the projects are still ongoing, where every sort of crew will come together. They will plan sort of their look ahead and weekly plans, and they will also discuss about their handovers, which is sort of quite critical in achieving the total productivity, the system productivity. Without the seamless handovers, you're going to have sort of this sort of effect of how to say, disruptions between sort of each sort of handover and interface, and sort of that affects your overall productivity in general. And the key thing is that once that those sort of programs are broken down into little pieces, the information is then controlled effectively on both weekly and daily levels. So it's not just a sort of a look ahead like a 3 to 6 week cycle. It's actually a weekly and even a daily cycle. So all the trades, they come together, they commit to the work that they're going to do, they make sure that the safety has been addressed, they make sure the quality has been addressed, and then they make commitments to each other, to the project managers, and so on. And then they go back and sort of do this sort of a daily huddle every morning, making sure everything's sort of going as planned. And first, as the middle picture suggests, everything was done using whiteboards, and even this then printouts, and eventually after that they moved to a completely digital system. And by doing this, by sort of making sure that they had connected the model with the schedule, they were able to actually track the execution in a more intimate way, more kind of realistic way, and able to achieve sort of these first run studies, making sure that they're comfortable, with the plan, the crew is comfortable with how the work is sequenced, and then handing over to each other using mobile apps and things like that, once the first crew is finishing, the second crew starts, and so on. And this sort of transparency brings in sort of a completely dispute free environment. So the idea is to kind of democratize the whole sort of project management. And through this, they were able to achieve things like 60% reduction in defects, 43% improvement in program efficiency in quite a few processes, and 45% reduction in labor spend. And I must say that this particular project, had a mandate of almost over 85% prefabrication, and that also helped quite a bit with pre-assembled components being installed. But that still doesn't take away the importance of on-ground collaboration and coordination. And so that was quite critical. And the role that the model played here was for not just for the project managers or the superiors or the management team to kind of visualize, but people at the ground level, when they're planning and when they're in the execution stage, could also visualize where the work was going to happen and what were the impacts of that sort of constraints with space and other things, and bringing the information out from the model and things like that. So those things were extremely critical to kind of achieve that. And in terms of the field results, so this was for the fit out of one data hall, and they were able to sort of track this because and this was a unique opportunity that the team were building data centers which were kind of almost identical with each other. So they could track the first data center, which was CLN1. This is in Cloney in Ireland. They were able to fit out a data hall in 21 weeks, and this is when no lean was introduced. This is the traditional sort of methods. Then the second data hall, the second project, they were able to reduce that time to 16 by introducing lean methods, the analog processes that we mentioned up front, and without that groundwork, by the way, the groundwork of the basic sort of lean processes, people, and so on, you're not going to be able to achieve kind of the digital, which was the third data center there, where they could reduce that to further 9 weeks. And of course, we can't also take away the fact that the crew and the team had learned from those first two projects, all the mistakes and everything, so that they could sort of improve based on that as well. And so this is kind of also highlighting the need for continuous improvement. So based on the first and the third, they were able to kind of reduce the structural steel sort of time frame by 12 weeks, and that is quite critical here. And as I mentioned, this is enabled now by a completely live 4D environment where you can go back in time and see what happened last week. Why did we not complete something on time? What sort of problems did we face? And where did things break down, so that we can improve based on that, compared to how we're going to plan next week and next few weeks, so that we can address all the problems, all the handovers, all the sort of the sequences, firsthand. And this is quite critical. In COVID times, they had already adopted the lean and digital tools by then, so they were able to function through the COVID times using sort of these sort of digital tools, and that was quite important. Also including the sort of safe distancing that they could enable using the Visilin app. So there was a possibility to track how many workers are going to work at any location at any point in time, making sure that you could maintain the safe distancing with each other. And all the daily hurdles at that point then were happening using teams joining remotely, using web-based sort of systems. So that's quite remarkable. And actually, this is a quote from Kevin, who's been at the forefront running that particular project, how sort of the system has helped them improve sort of the production management aspect on that particular project. And how can you achieve this? And this is where I want to go back to the basics, where not just digital, but it's also important that we address these sort of core aspects. And so there is also this sort of transformation part where we focus on the flow and generation of flow. So not just the CPM schedules and sort of A to B and C, but also making sure that all the resources are flowing, to the production sort of line, eliminating waste, and identifying non-value adding time constantly, and sort of doing critical sort of value chain analysis, which Mark Worrell and the teams did on this project as well. So, making sure that all the non-value adding activities have been taken away and you're focusing on kind of the critical value adding activities, making sure that collaboration has been achieved, and this, in this particular case, on a single integrated platform. So making sure that the teams have tools to make sure that collaboration can flourish on the ground, and achieving then value, and making sure that you're fulfilling values to the customers driven through continuous improvement. So that's kind of the core theory of production, the transformation flow and value theory of construction. And as I mentioned earlier, it's all done through the sort of product and process integration, and that's based on the research we had been doing since kind of 2008 now. And it's been proven now that sort of by combining this sort of lean and BIM, the product and process together, we're able to achieve a much better sort of production management system compared to the traditional top driven, just a transformation driven system. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening to me. Hope it was useful. And if you have any questions, happy to answer them. So back over to you, Stuart, and the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bhargav. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
I'm sure we're going to have lots of questions. So let me bring everybody back in. Welcome, Mark and Steve, back in. You should be able to see my screen now. Yep. So I mentioned at the beginning, we had some questions at registration. There was quite a few there, particularly when I link up with the comments and other questions. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show those now if I can. And then maybe we can come back to the other questions that we've got here. I will say also, the attendees, if you could send your questions in now, we can pick those up and discuss with the panel. So the first thing that was asked in the registration was, do you use a lean tool in your construction? And the response was, if I can just bring this in, 11% said yes, 69% said no. What's the panel's view on that? Bhargav, can we start with yourself? What do you think? What's your thoughts on the reply there?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a bit shocking to me, to be honest with you, because I thought we had more lean penetration compared to that. But that means we have a much bigger opportunity to actually, bring that transformation. So, but I would say that's very interesting. And I don't know, because in the UK, since last couple of decades at least, there have been quite a lot of industry reports like the Egan and the Latham and then the later kind of Wolstenholme and other reports, which have promoted lean. And I wonder why this is still the case. But from what we see, at least in the bigger organizations, and Mark will definitely talk about this, lean has been sort of implemented and sort of institutionalized by now. So very interesting.
Sure. Steve, Mark, do you want to jump in? I think, Steve, you're eager to say something.
No, well, actually, I think having used it for such a long time, it may actually be what people would interpret it as a lean tool if we're as advanced as Visulean, but actually lean tools are 2 weekly work plans, they're the daily activity briefings, they're the post-it note sessions, and they all fall into that same category. So yeah, I think maybe some people will be using them, but not actually something like Visulean, I would say.
Okay.
I think it's a good point, because for me, for us, having come through all of this for years now, we just need to be careful what we actually categorize as a lean tool, because lean is a sort of way of thinking in reality and a set of principles and a whole host of tools underneath the banner, if you like, or whatever way we want to call it. So if people are saying, as Steve said, it can be the production planning from the collaborative planning down to the daily activity briefs, there should be something in the companies. But the question probably needs a bit of a broader, what do we mean by a lean tool, if you like, to actually clarify that. But if we're talking about a digital tool, I would go with those numbers. You know, if we were to talk, like Bhargav's just been saying, are people using digital production management, let's call it that, let's stick to that sort of term, then I think that's probably a fair representation, Bhargav, really, when we talk about the
Yeah,
numbers.
I think so too. I think so too, Mark. And this is where kind of a lean tool to me is not necessarily a digital tool, like you said and Steve mentioned, that a look ahead plan and a weekly schedule and the 5S and all those sort of things are lean tools as well. So maybe people thought, maybe Stuart, that you were asking them, are they using any digital tools? So but that means we have more opportunity there, 70%.
Indeed, more opportunity. Yeah.
Okay,
so on the comments and questions, and again, thanks very much for your time, because I know it takes a little bit of effort to put this together. But the comments and questions, the first statement we got was, let me just click onto that next bit. I've animated these. I'll try and whiz through them fairly quickly in conjunction with the panel. But the question was, how do we improve the productivity of the individual? I mean, to me, that's a big subject. It demands a big reply. But who wants to take that one? Who wants to take that one first? I mean, I've got my own opinions on that, but who wants to jump on that? Bhargav, do you want to say anything about that?
No, I would rather say that we should be focusing more on the system rather than the individual, because, like I said, we're not going to produce different kind of human beings. So suddenly, so improving the productivity of the individual, I think we can improve the productivity of the individual by sort of empowering them to take decisions on the ground, and by providing better collaboration, and rather than just pushing from the top down, and that's kind of the main thing for me. But
I think for me, Stuart, having come through, I mean, I've been trained by Japanese people in the past. It's always that, it's getting everybody, because the individual can improve. We do quite a lot of work around, day in the life of, and what are people actually doing. So there's the construction people, but there's also everybody, from every area of the business. But it's getting everybody to be thinking about, are they adding value to whoever might be their customer? Is it a non-value adding piece of work, or is it waste? And there's the categories of waste. And just by people starting to think about that, so we ran a leadership workshop a couple of weeks ago, and one of the guys on the workshop said he spends 5 days a month producing reports that he doesn't know where they actually go and whether anybody looks at them. So, we're starting to get them thinking about, actually, what am I doing? Is it adding value? Is it waste or non-value adding? And then we can get into, and that might be that there's big things, but there's little things that we can all do. And that's what we're now starting to tackle with them is, right, how do we take out what we call the time stealers from your day to release time for you to be more creative, problem solving, or imaginative?
Indeed. Okay, well, go on, Steve. Yes, please do.
So just to take it into the world of Mace, where we, like a project like ours, £500 million at Chelsea Barracks, we'd committed to a 2,000 stone output per week, which is the best part of 288 individuals that actually puts them on the wall. And we went through that, and I had a complete time and motion study, and we broke it all down into like 20 elements. And it was amazing how many times a manager had not set that individual up to be efficient, had too many tools, too many variables, too many drawings, constantly putting this down, constantly that. And the reality is, when we got up to 2,000 stones, 88 masons had to turn around 7 times a day and a stone be handed to them. That was the eventual answer, and that was a logistical management, lean, post-it note, everything session to actually make that all become a reality. And when it happens, it's a real good, rewarding thing. But quite often, managers don't realise what they're asking some of the individuals to do, and they want to be more productive, but we make it harder. And you can go into detail on how we did that, but actually, it was a real good achievement.
Yeah. Well, that's a fantastic case study. Yeah. Okay, so there's quite a few of them here. I'm just going to pick a few randomly. I'll skip through a few others. I mean, the next one is this. Thanks to Bargay, I think you've pretty much covered this anyway. Insights on the productivity paradox and how it should be managed better. You've given us a good overview on that one. If there are any other questions then that follow that theme, then fire them across. The next one is your thoughts on, I mentioned this earlier, your thoughts on full-time employees and hired consultants' productivity. Anybody want to touch that one? Or should we leave that one alone?
Oh, I see. Is that the difference between a full-time employee's productivity?
Yeah. Sorry, they're only short snips from the screen capture, but yeah.
I guess for just to throw something in, if you manage them, as Steve was saying, if we set the system up and we manage the objectives and the time and break it down, then we should get higher productivity out of both. Whether it be exactly the same, we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody who wants to jump in, please do. I'll keep going.
Yeah, I'll say that, like, and full-time employees. I'm guessing this is between people who are part of the a general contractor, and then people who are coming in as subcontractors as well. You can consider that maybe. But I think one of the key things, again, Mark can speak about this better than me, but like from the lean perspective, it's about sort of aligning your supply chain, and making sure that everybody's sort of on the same page about like what your production management system is going to be like, and how are we going to deliver things together. So things can be aligned if people are sort of brought in with that mindset, rather than just sort of handing out a contract and saying, here you go, just go and do your work, sort of a thing. Hope that makes sense. I don't know, Mark, do you want to add to that?
No, I think it comes back to what we were saying about breaking things down into manageable chunks is the sort of thing, and whether that's daily, half daily, but and if we are doing what we set as the goal, then great, and if we're not, we can do something about it. But if the task's too big, like it's going to take us 3 weeks, 3 months to do something, then it's very difficult to manage.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, moving through. Improve the productivity of the individual. Mentioned that already. How lean are we now in the UK? Do we have an answer for that one?
Actually, I think probably, I mean, if you to take some of the statistics out of the demonstration that Bargav used using Cloney, I've seen some of the outputs where they're saying planned individuals, to get the best out of them is like 364, actual individuals 363, planned activities 642 versus unplanned activities 1. And that's probably when we're seeing it ever at its sharpest. And we have a scale of all PPCs come out through Visulean and various tools that we do. And we're calling in directors if they're getting anywhere lower than 80% over that week of plan versus actual. We think that's the threshold. It says, look, you're only looking at a week to 2 ahead and you're not hitting targets like that. And then the root cause analysis, we look at that. So I would say we're getting them up to somewhere around about 90%. I don't know if that's the sort of scale measure we're doing that, but if everything we set out that we should have done and we committed to doing, we're getting probably 90%. But in Cloney, they were getting up nearer 100.
But if we were to go back to, the lean, if you like, is all about continuous improvement and all about challenging the norm of today to be better tomorrow. So in a way, it's difficult to say we're 90%, 95 or whatever. It's more, we took some groups of construction people to Toyota before Christmas for a masterclass. They are never going to say we are at 100% because it's constantly evolving and growing and developing, and that's the challenge really, is it's that constant pursuit of perfection, which we'll never get to, but constantly challenging. And that's what we need to get, is everybody constantly challenging and trying to improve, whether it's marginal gains, if you want to call it that, from a sporting analogy.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I'm going to take a question. Sorry, Bargav, go on.
Take a statistical approach to like how lean are we in the UK. I think if you think about like how many organizations have adopted lean in construction, then I think there was a report that came out, I think in the sort of late 20, between 2015 and 2020, can't remember when, but they said about 46% of organizations at that point in time had adopted lean, and I think that number would be sort of a bit bigger, I would imagine, because the likes of, Highways England or National Highways now, and Network Rail and those guys been pushing to their tier 1 supply chains, lean and other things. And so I think that probably has increased by now, maybe, I would say.
I would challenge that, Bhargav, to be perfectly honest.
No? Okay.
No. But
Mark,
it's also what do you class as lean? We had a client, I had feedback from somebody this week that somebody said, "Oh, we've been doing lean management at a senior level for a few years."
Yeah.
Well, what's lean at a senior
what
level?
Does it mean at senior level?
Yeah. No, so to ask them, they say, "Yeah, we're doing it, but is it on site? Is it on projects? Is it in the supply chain? Is it?" And so maybe we just need to think about the definition, if you like.
That is not just the lip service and actually on the ground. Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to take a question from the floor. Thanks to James Ellis. Thank you, James. And thank you also for your presentation yesterday. And James says, with your experience, this is to Mark and Steve, with your experience from analog to digital, do you think companies not using lean can go straight to digital with your drive?
I would say yes, to be perfectly honest. Depending on the project, let's just qualify. If we're dropping onto a project that's running late and you're up against it and it's challenging, then maybe you might not. But the way things are now and the ease with which we can use the systems, we are tending to have a default to go to digital and not post-it notes, if you like. It might not always be. We can jump to VisiLean, if you like, because we have got a sort of no offense, Bhargav, but we've got a cheaper, quick and dirty option that we can fire up dead quick. But that can be a stepping stone into the full-blown system. So I would say yes, with the right support as well, which is where we come from, is that people and process support. We talk about skill set, tool set, and mindset. Bhargav provides the tool set. We can support them in the mindset and skill set. But yeah, I think they can go for it in a digital way and see a lot more improvement quickly. It's not as scary as it used to be, is it, Bhargav, anymore with this, the way things are, we can make them run, and the ease with which people can use the systems, as long as they're supported, is probably my biggest emphasis.
Yeah, I also think it's an easy transition, and I think a lot to do with perhaps I've been working alongside this particular lean tool for the last 3 or 4 years, and it is a straightforward sort of like 3 or 4 minute import of your plan into a system that automatically gives you a management tool to manage make ready needs. And the old tools, the paper one and the dirty one that you were talking about is cheaper, is actually like herding kittens. You're getting 135 make ready needs to you on a Friday afternoon, and you've got to get them all ready for the following week. That's the old-fashioned system. One of my reasons I tout this within Maces is to say, look, you're going to get a constraints log that's a to-do list for your construction managers to make everything more efficient. And I do think main contractors are just make ready need experts. The more they make ready, the better the site goes. And we've been managing that by paper for so long, and if you don't do anything else in the VisiLean, what you're doing is you're actually getting them to keep it all together, and it's attached to the task. And I find that a very, very easy. Having done this for 40 years, it's the first time somebody's gave me something that says that will make your job easier as Mr. Main Contractor. And that's why I think the conversion to digital was a no-brainer. But a lot of people have to be dragged into it, kicking and screaming, and then they say, "Can we have another session, please?" Which is fantastic.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so there's a few more. Thanks for that, guys. There's a few more to go at here. Who's leading? I wouldn't like to say on this one, but maybe you've got a better view than I have. Clients, contractors, designers. If you want to skip that, fair enough. But
I wouldn't want to comment at the moment.
No. Okay. The next one I've got here. This individual, be interested in building a gaming aspect to help create more let me get it on the screen. Create more awareness and education to organisations and employees. The reason I've highlighted that in blue is COMIT, with one of the COMIT members, has just started to look very closely at that. And we had a presentation yesterday, which it's attracted a lot of attention. And I am going to raise this a little bit at the next, well, in between now and the next community day. If anybody wants to have a chat about that, then great. But can I ask the panel, Bargave, what are your views on that? Is that something that you guys have got an interest in?
Yeah, actually, that's a very interesting way of educating people. I think the more interaction, the better. If I go back all the way to 2007, when I joined Lowry as a researcher, I went to Sweden, and the Swedes had built a game. Mark would love this, to showcase how lean can be deployed on the site, like what would be the effects of aligning sort of the supply chain and so on. And that really made a huge difference to kind of really grasping the basic concepts. And I think that might be quite, useful for the new generation and so on.
Yeah. I think I have to agree. The metaverse is a really interesting future for us. And 2 weeks ago, I had 12 of my team walking around our BIM model as virtual avatars. We're looking at issues on the walls and then junctions, and a lot of consultants are saying this is giving clients proper sort of views of these issues and things. So it's a small leap to say, can lean be proven that way as well? And we were in awe of that ability of actually walking through our own model. When you look at it as a doll's house, and then you can actually go around the issues. And I was the leader of it, and I quite enjoyed the fact that I could press. Everybody had to come and follow me after they'd taken 10 minutes to find the basement 3, and then all of a sudden I've got them on the roof. But actually, this is going to be the future.
Yeah.
And also, Stuart, this gets into just how do we bring more people into the industry? Young people coming in.
Yeah.
We've had an apprentice join us last summer from the local school. She's 19 now. There was no reference to construction at the school.
No.
So I think explaining to people around these sort of ways of working, and it's not all just being out on site, and different skills can come in, will, as this person said, they raise awareness and education to bring people into the industry as well.
Yeah, I think some of it's the involvement commitment thing. I mean, I can remember back when I first became interested in construction, the thing that did it for me was actually seeing the practical side of it. So you've got pictures, you've got sketches, you've got on-site works. That's the thing that really interested me. And the gamification side of it is something that we talked about maybe 4 or 5 years ago with some blue chip construction companies, and 1 or 2 of them went away and did a bit of work in the background. And it's evolved, and on the back of it, they've improved. So yeah, I think it's a great way forwards.
As part of the commitment from MACE, we always have tried to do like 2 educational commitments a month out in the communities we work in, and we brought from Greenwich University sort of 20 to 30 students about 12 times to the project I've just finished in Woolwich. And the things we were teaching them about the electronic post-it notes, Visualine, Last Planner tools, the teachers were in awe. There's more than the actual students themselves, and sort of like, well, who's going to teach us? We're so far removed from this type of thing. We're still teaching, line of balance, programs. So I think there is another part there, and they actually said that in Grange. They said we may have to need a teachers sessions just to get them a bit further up to speed, because it is moving so fast.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so a couple more here to finish this page. Before I get onto the next one, in fact, there's one more. Elimination of file export import processes that do not add value for the client. Not sure where that's going, but any thoughts on that, guys? No?
Well,
No.
weirdly, that's actually is titled as a negative, but actually exporting the through Visualine, the actuals was one of the best lean things I found, because my planner would normally phone up 5 construction managers and get hand marked up models, programs, and then he would have to bring them into one and send it back to me. And I think he was doing 2 hours, they were all doing an hour each, and that's probably about 7 hours. And now there's a button that says extract actuals, and they said, right, I've done it now, and probably wiped 7 hours of productivity off it. So that's actually exporting, and I'm probably getting that question wrong, but if that's what we're talking about, it's actually some, for me, it's a positive.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide now, and this was, well, you'll see it. That unless anybody else got any comments on anything there that they've no, I'll move on to the next one. So I didn't animate these. I bulleted them, taken straight from the replies. Thanks for everybody's replies. What would you like to see in digitalized lean construction that isn't in the market now? So, where do you want to start, guys? Bhargav, do you want to start first? I mean, there's a few things to go at there, but do you want to pick one? And
I really I think these are some interesting points. So this is what you ask people, and that's what they've come back with. Am I right?
these are the questions we set, or the question we set in blue, and these are the replies.
Okay.
There was quite a lot of duplication, I note. You know, some would say AI and BIM, some would say BIM, and then later on they'd say AI, IoT. So they're distilled somewhat, so we haven't got duplication. But
yeah, no, I mean, from our perspective, from what you saw, we do quite a lot of these things already, like operative productivity. We capture, you know, how better we are in sort of producing things, and PPC and other measures. Rationalize interface, that's what we do as well from last planner. That's what Steve was mentioning, you know, taking the inputs from the master schedule and then, you know, updating things in Visilean and then reconciling them with each other. BIM integration. We also are looking at IoT integration soon, looking at AI right now. We have a couple of students sort of doing research on, you know, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and how do we improve forecasting as well as, you know, integration with BIM. So there are lots of things we're currently looking at. In data format interoperability, we already kind of interact with a lot of different data formats and sort of both BIM and planning side, but I don't know, I'll leave it to the other panelists.
I'm just before I do that, I'll just skip to the next slide and come back to this, but finishing off the questions for the what they'd like to see. The thing that the bullet at the top there, education awareness, I think my experience of this particular subject, I got talking about AWP, which you'll know about, Bhargav, from your involvement with where you are now. You know, people were saying to me, well, you know, lean and AWP or work packaging can work together nicely. We don't see any examples of it, and of course there are organizations doing it, but they're not freely talking about it, and I think there maybe needs to be more of that, and that maybe comes back to education awareness of lean in general.
So just AWP has been quite successful in the oil and gas type of environments, and you know, I think there are lots of overlaps between the concepts, and I think there should be at some point, you know, a workshop to align the two, really, you know, because there are some interesting things we can do together. So I'll say definitely the awareness of the concepts and in general will help.
Did you say, Stuart? Sorry.
Yeah, go on. Carry on, Mark.
Well, did you say, Stuart, just general awareness of lean and education around lean principles and lean concept?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because that, you know, we've worked with, so we've got some projects and some training programs where companies can use their CITB levy to pay for modules around the different lean construction tools and techniques. So whether it's, as Bhargav said, down to a 5S module, collaborative planning, visual management, you know, so those modules are available, and if people have got levy, then they're effectively free, and we can deliver them face to face or, you know, remotely. So there is more impetus to raising the education levels and making it accessible to people. As I say, being able to deliver those digitally, remotely, without losing the sort of experience is really useful now, really positive. So you know, that's, I can let you know where people can, you know, look for that sort of thing.
Indeed, and maybe we should have a follow-up. I mean, Bhargav, there's something, you know, we could talk about the work packaging. You know, it's not just oil and gas now. It's in the energy sector. It's in chemicals. People are doing it, and I think there's an opportunity to go further. So yeah, let's take that offline and have a discussion about that. Just before I get out of that one and say thanks for everybody's contribution, Steve, is there anything else you'd want to add? I do have a few more questions here that's written down.
Just go back to the screen before, if you don't mind, Stuart.
I can indeed, yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I think this is probably when you get to my level of, we're now using digital command rooms within Mason. It's data is a new oil, I keep hearing, and we're looking for trends and reasons for issues. A lot to do with the flow and the work measures, and what we're doing is actually, but if anybody doesn't realise, when you're using Visilean, we're asking our operatives or our managers to progress an activity 2 to 3 times a day, so they'll commit to how many doors they're going to install. And if I'm looking for 10, I'd expect to see at least by lunchtime that they've got 5. And there's a little chat box to say, are you not updating this, or are you not actually doing it? And we've never had that sort of transparency before. We've not had that ability to sort of like look deep into the workforce. But also the BIM models in front of you on the screen, and it will turn to red if that person doesn't feel that they can finish that activity. And you can be down there before they even pack up their tools and say to them, right, what's the problem? Say, was a temporary cable there. Now, you'd be expecting that to come up in the preparation 2 weeks before, but let's just say it's on that time. But as an old site manager, these are things we've never done before. And I think as people saying that it's awareness, you know, and we need to do more of these types of sessions and say, look, there's tools out there to help you with this. It's not the old fashioned way. And people like Mace and our competitors are getting there, and there's a lot of people behind us, but you know, this is the way forward, definitely.
Yeah, indeed. Okay. I've got a couple more questions here. I'll just say thank you to everybody for participation in that. Steve, this is for you. I mean, you've managed some significant projects over the years. How have things, I know you touched on a little bit earlier, but how have things improved in terms of process improvements, and where do you feel it needs to be in the future? What should we be doing? More digital, or do we need to be looking at something else?
So off-site manufacture is a key driver for Mace now. That's probably one of our top ones, where we're doing net carbon zero, digital solutions, and construction to production. And we're trying to make a commitment that we will assemble 90% of our construction by 2026. So if people don't know, we've now got high-rise solution, which is where we actually cast a slab on a steel base, and we flip it over, put the cladding on, put some props on there, pick it up with the pod and the box already in it, and we drop them in, and you can do the whole flooring within 3 hours, and it's quiet, it's nice, it's neat, and it's actually probably the young children who are joining our industry, it would be great fun because it just clicks together. And then the next day we just stitch them together. And we've done that in a story sort of like 40, 50 stories high, 55 hours turnaround, finished every level top to bottom. And it's I can see that being the way this industry is going to go in the future, and people need to get on board with that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic concept. It's not new. We've been doing it for a long time, but we've been doing it in small scale. You know, some of the offshore rigs, a lot of the elements of that were modular, but it's niche, and it needs to be, you know, there needs to be more of it, and I totally agree.
I think if you've seen the 1963 video where they did a temporary road over Oxford Circus, they put it together from the Friday to the bank holiday Monday through that time, and people were driving on the Tuesday, and these were all coming in as slabs with the tarmac already on them. And there's a lovely video of it all clicking together, and you think, yeah, absolutely, we've been doing this a long time.
Fantastic. Mark, can I ask you the same question?
I guess just from my point of view, it's the blend together of innovation and continuous improvement. You know, we'll have the steps, but we need to have that constant drive. You know, if there's 3,000 people in Mace, however many there are, sorry, Steve, I don't quite know, but you need to have an army of people all looking constantly for improvements, small improvements, and then big ones. And then how we turn the big ones, as you were just saying, Stuart, how we fail fast or we do them quickly. We get them into production, into mainstream use as fast as possible. And that probably is, for me, it's that mindset. It's the constant challenge, you know, single minute exchange of dies, Steve, what the art of what's possible. So it's not necessarily I've got a solution. I'm just saying we need more of a sort of mindset of right, I'm going to attack everything that's not adding value, and let's
Yeah.
be open, and let's be open to opportunities and challenge and try.
If I could encourage anybody to watch a 5-minute video, it would be the Metro Food Bank after Hurricane Katrina, where Toyota went into these volunteers and said to them, right, let's look at what you're doing. And they were sweating and not feeding half the people. And they put in some efficiencies and they were loving it and feeding twice as many people. And that's what lean is. You don't even realize it's easier to achieve when you plan it properly. So yeah, it's called the Metro Food Bank. It's on YouTube. It's a fantastic video.
Metro Food Bank. Okay, great. Thank you for that. So, okay, thank you. Mark, I've got a question for you. Do you think COVID has had an impact on how people are reviewing construction project delivery methods? And is this for the better?
Yeah, well, it has. We get quite a few people sort of suggest how surprised they are that productivity's gone up. You know, there might be less people, they might do less things, but the people doing it are more productive by the fact that there are one-way systems. There's clearly defined places to drop products down. You know, the canteens, you know, are sort of scheduled so we don't get hordes of people. You know, we can't get hordes of people in lifts, so it's much more regular. Flow is probably the word, you know. And then I think, Bhargav, you know, it is then the adoption of digital, because we can't have 60 people in a room doing post-it note collaborative planning. Also, we're finding leadership teams can't be going around and looking at projects all the time. You know, they could even be saying we only have 30% of the leadership team on site at any one time. So we have to find these ways. And then ultimately, I suppose the biggest picture for UK PLC is that we haven't got as much money as we did have. So we're going to have to do more with less, or achieve more with the same, because you know, the coffers are a bit stretched now. So you add all those together, you've got the digital, people have seen that productivity can improve, and we haven't got endless budgets, and it's sort of coming together to sort of maybe have a perfect storm of, right, we've got to do something completely different, not just, you know, a little bit on the edges.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to come back to Steve, if I may, and just ask you one final question. I know, again, you've touched on this a little bit, but what would you say is the main challenge to our industry right now?
We're probably trying to find that the skills are going to be assemblers. The actual tradesmen are going to focus maybe being in the factories and producing more for it to be assembled on site. So I think the skills that gap is so big now, it's so hard to plug it, that now we're going to have to try and find ways of dumbing it down, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to come to Bhargav now. Any thoughts and observations on the comments that we've had, and maybe just a final comment before we close out?
No, I think the last few questions were very interesting, and I'll just weigh in on one of those where, you know, sort of started research on this about 12 years ago, and when we started to approach people, the initial kind of movers like Steve and you know, Kevin and so on, you know, they were always on board. But when we were going down the other sort of knocking on other doors, we were not really getting much response. You know, it was very difficult. The mindset change, I would say, even in the last 5 years has been phenomenal. How people are now looking at things, they're more open to embrace these sort of, you know, new ways of working. I know COVID has had an impact, but I think there has been other sort of shifts as well. I think people are more accepting of these sort of technologies, but not just technologies, that these sort of new methods like lean and AWP, you know, like you mentioned. So that's something quite sort of interesting for us now, and we see a lot of hope there, because the reason why we founded VisiLean was to actually address problems, you know, mainly where it was through sheer frustration that why are we doing the things the same way we've been doing it, and accepting, you know, these sort of inefficiencies. So how can we do things better? And now finally, when people have started to adopt this, you know, people like Steve, it's really heartening, you know, that finally something's happening on the ground. So that's number one. And I think COVID has definitely had an impact in accelerating that change. So that's even though that was a huge kind of, it was a very nasty thing to happen, but something positive has come out of that for our industry there. So that's quite interesting and you know, positive there. But other than that, no thanks. And I think communities like this, you know, COMIT and others are, you know, absolutely essential to kind of push on the agenda. So thanks for arranging this, Stuart. You know, it's nice.
Thank you for your support. Much appreciated. I'm just going to wrap up now with a few final slides. I'm going to say thank you very much to our sponsors, to Virgin Media O2 and Snugs. Couldn't do this without you. Let's keep the conversation going through the social media buttons. We want to raise the bar, so join the conversation. And I want to mention the next session, which is on the 25th of March with Jeff Zeiss of Between the Poles. And what I will say is when we did this 2 years ago, we were absolutely inundated with questions. We were still answering the questions and having dialogue 6 months later. And for those in the industry that have come across uncharted services, this is just for you. This is a fabulous session. And yeah, so that's the next one in March. I also want to mention one more announcement, and that is the COMIT Community Day on the 9th of June, and that's going to be held at the JCB headquarters in Staffordshire. Mr. Bamford himself has promised us the theatre, so my mission is to try and fill it. We've not managed it yet, but we got close a few times. So anybody wants to come along to that, get in touch. So I've just got to say finally, thank you. Bhargav, the team, Visiline, thanks very much for putting this together. I'd like to say thanks to Steve, thanks to Mark, been great panelists. Thanks for your time. Setting aside an hour or two on a Friday afternoon when the pubs are open is a challenge, but you know, it's happy hour. So final words, Steve, do you want to say anything before we wrap up?
No, really delighted to see this word getting out there, and yeah, I'm hoping that day will come where people will see that this is a way forward, and we'll all become more efficient because of it, and better embodied carbon the more efficient we are.
Brilliant. Mark?
Just thank you, as it says there, but also just going back to Steve's point mentioned earlier, it's more fun as well.
Indeed, indeed. And you want to close out, Bhargav?
No, thanks. I think we've covered everything, and like you said, you know, thanks to all the participants. You know, the real happy hour will start now, I guess.
It depends where you are. Some people it's breakfast time, but
I know.
Anyway, thanks very much.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great weekend. Cheers now.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye. Bye.